Welcome to Hidden Histories Exposed, your go-to channel for entertainment and intriguing curiosities. Over 4 decades since his death, Bob Marley remains the most representative icon of reggae. He is remembered not only for his immense talent as a songwriter and musician, but also for his personality and messages of peace ingrained in all his music and repertoire. However, although many believe he led a peaceful life, Bob Marley actually faced serious problems and conflicts with those close to him. Even after achieving fame and success, some of these experiences remain unknown to many. Therefore, today we will discover who Bob Marley was, what painful events marked his life, where he came from, and under what conditions this immense composer and messenger of peace lived. Bobby Marley is one of the most famous reggae artists in history, with over 75 million records sold. Additionally, he served as a significant symbol for the Rastafarian religious movement and for his home country of Jamaica. In 2021, marking 40 years since his death, Rolling Stone magazine highlighted 5 interesting facts about the reggae legend. We'll share some of them to reflect on the journey of this great artist. Bob Marley was the son of Norval Sinclair Marley, an older white man who was a captain in the British Army, and Cedella Booker. Their marriage was scheduled for July 1944, but Norval left Cedella pregnant and returned to England. The story is about Robert Nesta Marley, or simply Bobby Marley to those close to him, and it begins on February 6, 1945, in the small countryside town of St. Anne, where he was born. Bob never had direct contact with his biological father, and some say that he sent money to his mother after a few years to support the family. Other sources claim that Marley saw his father only a few times after his birth, and that Norval Marley was passing through Kingston on behalf of the British government when he met Bob's mother when she was just 16 years old, and he was approximately 60. Later, Marley's mother married Todd Livingston, and Bob became close friends with his son Bunny, marking the beginning of the artist's journey in music. He and his half-brother crafted guitars out of tin cans and tried to play songs from the United States. Growing up in a rural town, he was responsible for rural chores such as milking the herd and tending the garden, and in his free time, he learned a bit about music from older relatives. There are reports that he also had family influence in music. Another curiosity that marked Marley's childhood was his skin tone being of English descent. He was called the Red Boy by residents in the St. Anne parish. Bob Marley's childhood and youth were not much different from the hustle of many young black people scattered throughout the outskirts of countries around the world, with few opportunities and complicated living conditions. At the age of 5, he moved with his family to Trenchtown, a community consisting of slums located in the suburbs of the capital, Kingston, Jamaica. Bob had 2 stints in this suburb, at ages 5 and 12, when he, along with his family, stayed in the capital in pursuit of financial stability for his mother and stepfather. It was here that he later delved deeper into music and transformed into the star of reggae music. The interesting events that mark Bob Marley's first stay in Trenchtown include his final encounter with his biological father and his decision to leave school, returning to the city of St. Anne where he was born. It wasn't until the late 1950s, almost a teenager, that Bob Marley returned to Trenchtown and began forging his own path. Despite being a very poor place, the community was culturally rich, serving as inspiration for many songs that the musician wrote during his time there. In the early 1960s, the ska rhythm, which combined local interpretation with American soul and R&B, became popular as the primary Jamaican rhythm, dominating the island's music industry. The rhythm emerged with a strong influence on young Jamaicans, a glimmer of hope and escape for those living without prospects in the outskirts of Kingston. After leaving his homeland in search of a better life and moving to Trenchtown, Marley made music the purpose of his life. Guided by his stepfather's son, Bunny Wailer, Bob began taking music lessons while still attending regular school, until music started to dominate his daily life, leading him to abandon regular classes and dedicate himself entirely to music. According to a website dedicated to his life and work, the turning point for Bob Marley's musical career occurred when he met Desmond Decker, a soldier who worked alongside him and had recorded a song. According to sources, Marley worked as a welder, compelled by his mother who feared he would become a rude boy, a sort of delinquent in Trench Town. Shortly after, at the age of 16, Bob recorded his first song called Judge Not in 1962. The recording served as leverage to bring together the names that would later form the Wailers' Peter Tosh, Bunny Wailer his half-brother, and Bob Marley himself. Contrary to what one might imagine, technically, Bob was not an excellent instrumentalist, but he gradually improved. However, an undeniable fact is that Bob was always surrounded by excellent musicians, from the time of the Wailers to his solo career. What's more incredible is that nearly 50 years after his death, the composer and singer still stands out among the most profitable stars on the planet. His placement on the charts of commercially active deceased artists is explained by genuinely global fame and the attraction of his merchandise. Any product bearing his name and image is marketable, including clothing, cannabis products, and even his biography, with about 500 books about the star. An interesting aspect is that much of this music legend is based on fables and even misunderstandings. However, this doesn't quite make sense in the case of Jamaica, where, according to a local saying, you won't find facts but rather versions. The newspaper El País even alludes to the numerous inventions of local record labels that multiplied versions of Marley's greatest hit songs, often from the same recording in order to generate more revenue. The article emphasizes that what is commonly told about Bob Marley often requires historical correction and revisions. El País sheds light on the fact that the very existence of the reggae myth is often depicted as a metaphor for colonialism. This is because a major misconception is that his biological father was a white British officer who impregnated a local girl. In reality, Norval Marley was also Jamaican by birth and became a militarized engineer during World War II. Another myth suggests that Cedella Booker was not a model mother who didn't take enough care of the boy. However, she and her son led a tough life together, facing numerous challenges. Before marrying an American, she had a complicated relationship with Bunny Wailer's father, whom we mentioned earlier. In his adult life, Bob had various supports to survive, even though he had prestige as a musician. His widow, Rita, recalls days when she had to hide her nudity, while the only clothes she had dried. We're talking about the shared life of someone who had a certain reputation as a musician. Imagine that. To get an idea of the desperation Bob Marley experienced during this time, he even immigrated to the United States and worked in factories for DuPont and Chrysler. However, the possibility of being drafted to fight in Vietnam prompted him to return to the Caribbean. The Rastafarian movement emerged in Jamaica in the 1920s among slaves and descendants of blacks with the goal of uniting the black race and living a simple life. Jah Rastafari is the supreme deity of the Rasta movement, responsible for guiding and instructing the paths of each devotee. Embracing the Rastafarian religion as a way of life, Bob Marley adopts some particularities of this philosophy and religion, such as the consumption of fruits, vegetables, and all that comes from nature, as opposed to the consumption of dead animals and the abstention from alcohol. Not to mention his iconic dreadlocks, which became the singer's signature. In the song One Love from 1965, all the political and revolutionary aspects of the doctrine, along with hope and positivity, are expressed in the lyrics. Cannabis has always been associated with religious matters in Jamaica and Rastafarian culture, rather than being seen as a mere vice, as in the famous motto sex, drugs, and rock and roll. In the case of the reggae icon, its use was part of the connection with the supreme deity of the black race unity, and in this sense, the practice was associated with a moment of reflection conducive to the creation and inspiration of each Rastafarian member. Through his songs and words, Marley spread around the world a message of freedom and impartiality regarding the plant. An essential piece of information is that the sacramental use of the cannabis plant dates back thousands of years, as it was incorporated into the mystical beliefs of religions in India and China due to its medicinal properties. This is why there is an influence on Hindu and Pan-African cultures, leading to the Rastafarian connection to marijuana. The Rastafarian movement is based on the idea that the Ethiopian leader Haile Selassie, also known as Rastafari before ascending to the throne, claimed to belong to a dynasty descending from the biblical King Solomon and was thus considered a messiah. Therefore, for Rastafarian culture, the effect of the plant involves expanding consciousness, improving inner connection, and bringing devotees closer to Jah, their God. The singer became renowned primarily for his lyrics addressing topics such as black empowerment and the fight against racism. However, those who think that the reggae star's first profession was music are mistaken. As mentioned earlier, Bob worked as a welder right after leaving school, and during a stint in the United States, he worked for an American multinational as a helper. An important fact is that even as a child, Marley was a palm reader. That's right. It's said that Bob Marley was so accurate in palm reading that he earned many coins with his practice of fortune telling and prediction for people. For much of his childhood, he made money by reading palms, and due to his insight and reputation in his hometown, even after the success of his music, he was still sought after for palm reading. Some say that Marley, with this experience, would later read people's hearts through his songs and compositions. In his performances, we can glean and be inspired by his simple and subtle way of conveying messages of peace and positivity. American journalist and collector Roger Steffens, considered one of the best biographers of Bob Marley, explains the phenomenon based on a spiritual theory. In his book So Much Things to Say, many of the interviewees who knew the reggae music icon portray him as an archetypal figure of the Christian myth, a child born poor, the son of a white man and a black woman, discriminated against by both whites and blacks, who becomes a deeply spiritual person, a natural leader, and perhaps even a prophet. Steffens compares his live performances to gospel gatherings, associating the singer with a preacher, always accompanied by a female backing vocalist. In 1963, at the age of 18, Marley joined Bunny Wailers and Peter Tosh to form the Wailing Wailers. After releasing the single Simmer Down, a ska song depicting the street gangs of Kingston, they soon changed their name to the Wailers. A few years later, they became Bob Marley and the Wailers. With this project, Bob went to England in 1972 and signed a contract with the small record label Island Records, owned by a Jamaican music lover living in London named Chris Blackwell. The manager claims he gave them £4,000 to record an album and stated that he never thought they would achieve anything with that first recording. However, 4 months later, the group ignited the music market with Catch a Fire, which would become Bob Marley and the Wailers' first album in Europe and the big bang of the reggae music legend. The first 20,000 copies of the original 1973 vinyl were designed by artist Rod Dyer and Bob Weiner, with a visual identity associated with the Zippo lighter brand. The vinyl cover was formed by the top part of the lighter, which, when opened, allowed space for the record to be removed from the cover. However, the technology of the time did not allow for large-scale production of this design, and the proposed design would significantly increase the price of the record. Therefore, the official cover of the other copies ended up becoming a portrait of Bob Marley. In 1976, Marley miraculously survived a brutal assassination attempt against him and his band. In December of that year, assailants stormed Bob Marley's house and attempted to take the life of the singer and his wife. Presumably, this was a consequence of his pacifist political stance in a turbulent Jamaica. One of the 86 bullets fired grazed his chest and lodged in his arm. The assassination attempt occurred 2 days before the Smile Jamaica concert, a free show organized by Jamaican Prime Minister Michael Manley. During the attack, Marley was accompanied by his wife, Rita, and manager, Don Taylor. The purpose of the concert was to ease tension between two rival political groups, leading to suspicion that the attack had political motivations. Many felt that the musician might be showing support for the Jamaican Prime Minister, hence becoming a target. Despite his injuries, Bob appeared with his band at the festival, where he once again called for peace. The concert became historic and forced him into exile, first in Nassau, Bahamas, and later in London, where he remained for 1.5 years. This period was enough to change his career and life, as it was there that the music legend composed and recorded two essential albums in his vast body of work. Exodus in 1977 tells the story of his exile, while Kaya, in 1978, explores themes of love, Rastafarian culture, and its relationship with marijuana. Kaya became Marley's most successful album of original songs in the UK, reaching number 4 on the charts. Some critics even suggested at the time that Marley had somehow traded his supposedly firm political convictions for the production of a more emotionally gentle album to become more popular. In addition to his music, Bob Marley left heirs who keep his legacy alive. At Zig, Stephen, Damien, and Julian Marley's concerts, they often sing several of their father's hits. It was 1977, and the Jamaican artist was playing soccer in London. During that game, he injured his right big toe, and the toenail fell off, apparently as a result of the untreated injury. However, 3 years later, Marley discovered that he had actually developed a type of skin cancer identified as malignant melanoma under the toenail. As per medical recommendation, Bob would have had to amputate the toe, but due to his Rastafarian belief, he refused to undergo surgery. As a consequence, the disease spread to other parts of his body, such as the brain, lungs, and stomach. At the age of 36, on May 11, 1981, Bob Marley passed away in the city of Miami, Florida, United States. He was buried in his hometown in Jamaica, and some say his body was placed in a mausoleum alongside a Gibson Les Paul guitar and a Bible. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and stay tuned for more hidden histories exposed.